would have been cool if the elders came and told me to preach today, and the text they gave me was Judges 3:22. That would have been fun. You guys can look that one up later. But what they actually said is, could you please speak on the 4th, which is much more open-ended. That's 31,000 verses, 1,100 chapters in there. Chapters and verses aren't real. Always yelling at my kids about that. It's still 66 books, so where do you start if someone just tells you to speak for 30 minutes? Pastor's already talking on Genesis. I would just say start at the beginning, but I can't cut in line. He's already there. It's a new year, but I never make any resolutions. Never have, never will. New year, that just means we sit around and look at garden catalogs and order seeds and start dreaming up what we're going to do with this year's garden. All right, I don't even like topical preaching. Topical preaching always ends badly. It's a mess, but we're doing it anyway. We're doing gardens. We're doing gardens and trees. I will be rambling incoherently for a little bit. So get the point out right up front. Some of you missed John's Sunday school lesson this morning. That's a pity. You guys have to stay. Everyone else can leave because I'm just going to redo John's lesson. I'm going to scale it back a little. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, but John's lesson is wonderful. For those of you that missed it, in a nutshell, he was looking at Joseph's life. And Joseph's life was just a dumpster fire for decades, the whole way through. Some of that mess was his own making. Some of that mess was completely outside of his control. And at the end of all of it, he ends talking with his brothers, summing it all up, just telling them, like, God's got a plan. We're good. So that's what you missed when you didn't come to Sunday school. I'm giving the exact same lesson, just so we start out the year with that in the back of our heads, knowing that life just looks like thistles and thorns at the moment. This looks cursed, which it is. It's okay. We got a plan and it'll all work out. I'm going to try to comb through that just by looking at 3 trees, and those 3 trees are sitting in gardens. So if that's the whole sermon outline, is just 3 trees sitting in gardens, and we'll try to stay on topic and see if we can get somewhere coherently from those 3 trees. Same as Joseph. He can't see it. It's a mess. But there's a plan behind the scenes. My poor wife has had to come home and where her beautiful backyard used to be, somebody ripped everything out. Her nice little lawn, her little fruit tree, they're all gone, they're ripped out. What on earth is going on? There is mud being tracked into the house, and it's a disgusting looking mess. Meanwhile, some unnamed husband is just happy as a clam because one of those unique little, we're going to go all the way to created mankind in his own image. Like, I'm not looking at the mess in the backyard. What I see is a finished product. And like a couple years later, it was gorgeous. It was all laid out. There was a plan. It turned out nicely. At present, it was a rototilled pile of mud. Those three trees will start, mostly we'll hang out in Genesis, just chapter 2. A little bit of background. I had mentioned that God created mankind in his own image. If you guys want to find Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we'll be bouncing around there mostly till the end. So just getting us to chapter 2 will set the stage there. We created a whole planet and an Earth, and by the end of our first week of work, we've had a sabbatical rest, and we've declared everything very good. By the end of chapter 1, it sort of sounds like we're stuck as veterinarians or ranchers or something. I'll just read real quick. We have God says, make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so they rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, over the creatures that move along the ground. So God created them, mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. God blessed them, said, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. We're gonna maybe come back to that verse 28 there later. Most of us who know the Genesis story are mentally already just skipping straight to like a serpent in a tree and Adam and Eve screwing everything up and getting kicked out. Want to slow down just a tiny bit. Slow down a tiny bit and look at what's going on before we get the boot a little bit more. So Lawrence read this morning and he rocked those names. I'm going to try not to say them at all. But we're not going to just skip straight to the serpent and Adam and Eve messing things up. We're going to slow down a little bit and look at this garden and look at these trees. So in chapter 1, we had that dispositioning as God was making everything and declaring it good or very good, except for the dude being alone. That was no good, and we fixed it. So now we have an all-good garden with trees that are like described as pleasing to the eye and good for food. And I don't think that includes the middle of the garden, like where we have these two trees. First of our two trees here, we have a tree of life and a tree of knowledge of good and evil. And we get more description, as well as pleasing to the eye and good for food. We also have, by the way, don't touch that one, it'll kill you. So that warrants just a pause for a second. Like, wait, what do you mean we have an all good garden and it's pleasant to the eye and good for food, and by the way, it's a tree of death? At first glance, I was like, all right, this does not compute. Poke this thing with a stick a little bit and see what shakes out. I know it's thousands of pastors and commentators and all sorts of folks have suggested different stuff about this tree of knowledge of good and evil. Most kind of suggesting it's exactly what it sounds like, in addition to maybe knowledge of good and evil suggests that authority to rule and exercise judgment, and that's tying into the fall and where that was coming from. That exercising judgment we already mentioned. God's doing that repeatedly throughout the creation process. We're making something, we're declaring it good, like in Genesis 1:10, or very good in Genesis 1:31, or not good in Genesis 2:18. I already mentioned that not good was the man being alone when we promptly fixed it and we're back to good. We read that Adam and Eve are like already created in his image. Can we say like, okay, trying to be like God, that's good? Heard that in church somewhere, supposed to try to be like God, like sounds like sanctification, right? Go eat from that tree. That same concept throughout the Bible, it gets like a stamp of approval. Like Solomon prays for wisdom. Like Solomon prays for the gift to be able to judge between good and evil, and he gets a pat on the back. He gets a thumbs up. God grants his request. We keep going all the way. New Testament, our author of Hebrews like longs for the church to grow in maturity, putting away the food of infant, moving into true spiritual nourishment in order that they may discern between good and evil. That's Hebrews 5:14. Like, so when we're looking at it, it doesn't seem like it's something intrinsically evil. It's like, so where does that leave us? What's the deal? Why do we got a tree of death sitting in the middle of the garden? From what I just read, like if we're supposed to be trying to be the image of God, like sounds like Eve made the right choice. That sounds like something good. Like, no. Pretty clear she didn't make the right choice. This is already starting to sound like my kids justifying why it was right that they just directly disobeyed a direct instruction, and it's all my fault because I never should have demanded such an outlandish thing in the first place. For those of you that aren't parents, you lucky duck. I know I'm fallen humanity and probably not the best dad, but like, I have no idea what a perfectly loving God would be thinking at this point when Eve's just like Adam and Eve. Like me personally, I'm in no mood to start justifying myself to these clowns like that don't even recognize that this instruction was for their own good because I love them. And I'm going down that road. You've probably heard other people say that, like, the trees were a test from God and to see if they were going to make the right decision. I've graduated from no seminary ever, but I'm never sounded like sound theology. Like, just as parents, like, we don't set up scenarios for our kids to fail at. I mean, we put boundaries up to protect them, but you don't set them up to fail. If we want, we can default to James. He's in the New Testament in 1:13. Like, he's authoritative there. He's telling us, like, don't even kid yourself. God's not tempting you. You're just lusting after sin. That's in James 1:13. That sets better with my big, kind of seems to fit the Bible a little better, that explanation. So we don't get any explanation. But I don't think it would be outlandish to suspect, who knows, that tree probably had a time maybe in God's plan. If it's looking like the tree itself wasn't something bad, it was something good. So that probably means if it's something good, you can still have something good, but it's not good now, it would be good later. And if I try to delve into that too deep, I just need to dial it back and remember, like, okay, then we got the book of Job, and the book of Job is just a happy little reminder, like, don't get too uppity demanding answers from God. Like, that's not my prerogative. So trying to balance those two is always a good idea. We can take a stab at it, but we'll probably never know the full story this side of heaven. But we do know that tree never shows up again. You get the boot out of Eden, and you never hear of it again. Like, it doesn't make a comeback. We don't see it again. So we're going to get through life without it somehow. And we want to kind of skip, still got the giddy-upsies to get booted out of Eden. I want you to look at this slide real quick, and someone eventually can shout at me what I'm doing wrong. There's something wrong with that slide. We can boot Adam and Eve out of Eden. They are cursed. They're making the wrong decision. We're cursed. The ground is cursed because of you, and I'm going to go by the sweat of my brow, eat my food until I die. The end. No more Eden. Did anyone figure out what was wrong with my slide? Like, well, no. Since when do we jump from verse 9 to verse 15 and skip all of Lawrence's hard words? See, like, subconsciously, everyone's perfectly content to just skim over those verses because they're like, they can't be there for any reason. They're just taking up space. I've never made a head nor tail of any of the genealogies. I just skim over them. This is probably because I'm lazy. They've got to be there for a reason, to teach, instruct, for some reason. So before we just cut straight to getting booted out of Eden, let's go back and look at the whole thing and see what we skipped and glossed over just because it was hard to pronounce and didn't seem to have any particular bearing on the narrative. Just for fun, when I'm supposed to be responsible and trying to prepare something to share with you guys, I went and looked at resources to see what they did with this. And when it comes to verses 10 through 14, most of the pulpits and the commentators, you know, for the most part, we're all in agreement. Let's just skip to verse 15. There wasn't a lot there. There was a couple guys arguing over symbolism versus whether it's historical geography and stuff that got wiped out after the flood. But for the most part, people were just, let's skip to verse 15. I was talking about trees and gardens. I've talked to Emily, I've talked to John and Dick, and who else have I talked to? When you talk to a gardener, talk to Mary, not a single one of them has told me, I have a garden, period, next topic. Not a single one. You go find any gardener and get them started, and get comfortable before you get them started. I'm going to tell you about my garden in detail.
Come on now.
In detail. Why? So we put a lot of work in that garden, and we like it, and we care about it. This particular garden, Adam didn't plant it, but he got the benefit of starting there. So somebody else is describing this garden. And we can look at all of recorded human history, starting from Genesis through present, and all of your good gardens have water features in the middle. And this water feature is unique. I try not to be a slacker. We have a river watering the garden flowed from Eden, and from there it was separated into 4 headwaters. Now I'm just going to skip them. And these 4 headwaters, we're describing where they're going. Let's just say they're all flowing out of Eden from this one headwater. And the first thing we notice is that this garden God set up here is completely backwards of everything we know about our water features. If you're thinking of rivers, we think of whatever you want, the Nile, the Amazon, the Mississippi. All the rivers start with our little streams flowing into bigger creeks, which flow into bigger streams, down into the bigger river. We don't have rivers that start here and split out and go into smaller streams. So right out of the gate, we immediately are like, okay, God's garden here. God's garden is unique and special. And as much as I try to avoid symbolism and say quite literally, like, this is cool because there was actual water flowing in all these different directions from one spot, and you can maybe sneak a little bit of symbolism in there. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden. The whole way through Scripture, everywhere, that literally and figuratively throughout the entire narrative, all the way to Revelation, you have this picture of that water bringing life, whether it is literally like your founding father fighting over wells. Right here, nobody has discovered the fine art of well digging yet. So for Adam and Eve, this is their water. It is their life, as well as the gardens. And Eden, we didn't really plan on staying there forever. Back when we were in chapter 1, if we remember, they were tasked with filling the earth. So you can't really fill the earth without leaving Eden. So this is the first interstate highway system we have going out in all directions, which would enable them, without any plumbing or water or digging a well, to travel out and do what they were tasked to do. And the other unique thing that I noticed in this narrative, we got a garden and we got rivers and they're flowing different places. And completely off topic, we throw in, oh, and there's gold over there. And your version said bdellium, which I did look up, and this one's translated aromatic resin. It's sort of more like that, like the wise men were bringing gold and myrrh and frankincense. It's just nice, smelly stuff. And onyx, which These are all useless things. You can't make them into tools. They're not like bronze and steel or something. This is serving no use whatsoever except to sit there and be beautiful. Or you could think of it as luxury items, or just to sit there and be beautiful is really all this stuff's good for. It's not good for it's not bronze and steel. You're gonna go make an axe. Like, why on earth is that sentence even there? But all the gardeners are, of course, like, well, the whole point of your garden is to be beautiful, so you're going to call out, you're going to have some garden statuary, you're going to have some gold and gorgeous shiny stones and stuff. Perfectly natural. Maybe the non-gardeners are like, it makes no sense to even have it there. But it's there. And we'll come back to that all the way at the other end in Revelation, which is this is me connecting dots. Whether these dots exist or not is your job to go read, study, and decide for yourself. I'm just going to cruise through here real quick. I don't know if you can see what's going on up there, but I picked a handful of these, and I did my best to get all of my continents and a couple millennia. Not Antarctica. Most of my continents and a couple millennium. You get the idea as far as they were gardens. They had water features in the middle. And for all of recorded human history, you have people wanting to make these things. I will leave it up to you to decide why that is. Just a quick observation to fill a couple slides. So I left you with a garden and those two trees there. And we said one of those trees it got wiped out in the flood and we're not going to see it again. I'm going to very briefly, because I can't see the clock, but I'm sure I should stop talking soon. I thought that 10 minutes ago. We have another tree, and it's squished between gardens again. Even if you've never entered a church in your life, probably just driving by, you've seen a cross or hanging on a neck somewhere. So I'm not going to dwell too heavily on this little section, but I just thought it was fascinating because I never even noticed before. So I just read those 3 verses and point out that we have garden, cross, garden, and then we'll keep moving real quick. This first garden, I think they don't use the word garden in John, either John or Mark. One of the other Gospels, it's explicitly called the Garden of Gethsemane. But so before Jesus goes to the cross, he's going to go pray and get betrayed. And in his plan for the course of the world, he chose to do that in a garden. So with Matthew 26:36, what did I touch? Oops. Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane and said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. So this whole scene before the cross where he is praying, he's talking, he's teaching his disciples, he's getting betrayed by Judas, all that's happening in this garden. He's going to the cross. And then in John 19:41, at the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden. In the garden was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. So after we're coming off the cross, back to the garden to get buried there. there's lots of verses I could have picked. I just really love this one because it sums up the whole Jesus' whole sums up Jesus' whole mission there in one sentence. So this is in Acts 5:30. God of our fathers raised up Jesus, whom you slew and hanged on a tree, and him hath God exalted with his right hand to be prince and a savior, to give repentance to Israel and for forgiveness of sins. I'm going to say maybe this tree gets tagged in. We have done away with that other tree, and we have replaced it with another tree that'll allow us back into that relationship, back into that Garden of Eden, and to get us that knowledge of good and evil, not like Adam and Eve sort of making it up on their own. This one we come to acknowledging that God is saying, okay, here's what's good, here's what's evil. The only way you come to that cross is acknowledging, like, this is how you set it up, and that's how I'm going to take it. One other verse in there for the interim in between Genesis and Revelation. There's got to be something going on. That whole time, Joseph wasn't sitting there waiting for something to happen. Joseph was working away and doing a good job. What are we supposed to be doing in the interim? I picked this one because it went with the theme. Rather than being fishers of men, this one is a garden analogy. This is Paul talking to the Corinthians, kind of essentially saying, like, the Corinthians were fighting over something silly, about who's leading and who's more important and that sort of stuff. But Paul gets them back on course. There was another teacher named Apollos, and they were fighting over, who was a better preacher, Apollos or Paul. But Paul was trying to get them steered back where they should be. So, 1 Corinthians 3:5, what after all is Apollos and what's Paul? Only servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each his task. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. It's neither the one who plants, the one who waters is anything, only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will be rewarded according to their own labor, for co-workers in God's service. You're God's field and God's building. The big picture, we're going all the way from Genesis to Revelation in one fell swoop. I don't get to see it from beginning to end. If it was my garden and I plant it, I can visualize the whole thing from beginning to end. If you're just a gardener, not the head gardener, you might not see that, but that doesn't mean you're not helping, you're not doing anything. You will sit there and plant and water and garden accordingly. In the meantime, so that's really all we had for this morning. Just that, no, there is a bigger gardening plan, and we get to be part of it. So if it looks like a mess, don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. It's under control. I said three trees and 3 gardens. This I was counting as 1 tree, 1 garden, and taking a stretch for now let's skip to here. I think this is Versailles or something. And anyone heard of it? Maybe, France, Kings. Okay. And it was just the punchline being, we got it all laid out with a lot going on, and from an aerial view, you can see what's going on here. So now let me go back here. I pulled this from Revelation 22, which is all the way on the other end of the picture from Genesis. And I know that when we start, it's talking about a great city, Holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. But if I just skip verse 10 and read the whole rest of the thing, and I'm talking about gates on the north, south, east, west, these big gates made out of pearls, and the wall made out of jasper, and there's no way around it. I can try. Jasper and sapphires and chalcedony and emerald and sardonyx and sardis and chrysolite and beryl and topaz and chrysoprasus and jacinth and amethyst. I don't even know what some of those are. But I had a bunch of them when I was a kid in my little rock connection, and they're shiny and beautiful. And I'm going to assume the other ones that I don't know what they are also shiny and beautiful. So if I skip verse 10 and read through this whole thing, we have these gates made of pearl. We have our paths made of pure gold, transparent as glass. In the middle of it, I have a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne. In the midst of the street, either side of the river, I have tree of life, which bears 12 manner of fruits and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. That doesn't sound like a city. That sounds like a garden. And my opinion doesn't matter. What's written in Scripture does. That being said, the city's so nice, it sort of sounds like a garden. The same way that Garden of Eden, he was saying, oh, and by the way, there's beautiful shiny things. There's beautiful shiny things over here. Why on earth would you bother listing what the wall is made out of? Because when you start a gardener talking about their garden and describing it, you better buckle in for the long haul, because you're going to get a description of every little beautiful thing therein. And we also know that that first tree, that tree of life, is back in the picture. That tree of life, after they got the boot, got my cheesy graphics up there. You saw the angel with the flaming sword. It was off limits for a little while. And it's back in the picture. I like symmetry and summing things up. So if I can squirrel that away in my head for a little bit. From Genesis to Revelation, and kind of remember those three trees that we make some bad decisions, and have a recourse to redress any mistakes involving a tree of knowledge and good and evil, to get back to where we were supposed to be to begin with. Just for the new year. In the interim, thorns and thistles and misery abound. But keep plowing. And that's what's going on in the big picture when we're playing with our thorns and thistles. And I couldn't resist because I had a computer in front of me and it couldn't be helped. Sorry, guys. 10 seconds or less from Genesis to Revelation. Here we go. We got Genesis. We have decisions to make. We have instructions. We have instructions to follow. We do badly with following instructions. It ends badly. Something needs to be done. It's okay. We have a plan, and we can get back on course. I hate art. It's all done so badly, but everyone does it so much better than I do. So this is what we're left with. I lost a slide, but it's okay. So 10 seconds or less, Genesis to Exodus. Let's keep us. Oh, there it is. That's why I was saying I hate art. It's so bad, but it's better than anything I can do. We're back to our tree of life there. So stick it out with our thistles and thorns in the interim. And I think we have more songs. I'm not sure when those songs are starting.